through the window as Bryce announced his nephew would take the design director position. My third rejection in 3 years. Sweat beaded along my hairline, not from the greenhouse heat, but from the volcanic rage threatening to erupt beneath my composed expression. Pierce has impressive credentials from his time at the University of Colorado, Bryce continued, avoiding my eyes. I gripped my soil-stained hands behind my back, knuckles whitening. Pierce sat smugly at the opposite end of the workbench, his pressed chinos still department store crisp, hands too clean to have touched actual soil in months. Yesterday, Mrs. Abernathy had stopped me in the parking lot to gush about how my native plant installation had attracted monarch butterflies for the first time in 20 years. Last week, the local news featured my water conservation garden design. 3 days ago, Bryce himself had mentioned my weekend workshops were bringing in record revenue. But there sat Pierce, 26 years old and primarily qualified by DNA. Merritt will continue leading our sustainability initiatives, Bryce added, throwing me the same bone he'd tossed after each previous rejection. My carefully curated smile didn't waver, though something vital inside me cracked. A sympathetic glance from Deb across the workbench almost undid me. I didn't need pity. I needed what I'd earned. The meeting concluded. Everyone scattered faster than birds when a hawk circles. Only Tori lingered, her mouth opening as if to offer comfort, then closing when she caught my expression. I stayed rooted until everyone departed, then walked with deliberate steps toward Bryce's office. Through the glass partition, I watched him hurriedly gather his things. My hand pushed the door open before he could escape. Why? The single word came out steadier than I felt. Bryce busied himself with papers. Pierce brings fresh perspective. His thesis on ornamental grasses was quite, I've generated more revenue for this garden center in 3 years than anyone in its history. My client waitlist is 4 months long. The Water Authority literally sends people here specifically requesting my designs. This isn't personal, Merritt. Tell me what more I could have done. His hesitation spoke volumes. Your approach is unconventional. Clients want reliability, not experiments. Experiments? The word tasted bitter. My designs save clients thousands in water bills and maintenance costs. They're not experimental, they're the future. Not everyone wants the future, Merritt. Some people prefer tradition. Tradition. Code for the chemical-heavy, water-wasting gardens that had been Pinewood Garden Center's bread and butter before I arrived. Gardens that generated ongoing maintenance contracts and repeated chemical sales. This is the 3rd time, Bryce. He finally looked at me, discomfort mixed with resolution. Perhaps your talents would be better appreciated elsewhere. The dismissal was clear. After 3 years, he was suggesting I leave rather than recognize my contributions. As I turned to go, I noticed Pierce peering through the office blinds, already measuring for new furniture. I walked out to my demonstration garden, relegated to the far corner of the nursery 3 seasons ago, and sat among the black-eyed Susans and purple coneflowers buzzing with bees. The native plant section I'd built from nothing had become the garden center's quirky corner, as Bryce called it. Never mind that this quirky corner had been featured in Gardening Monthly or that customers specifically came asking for that eco-garden lady. My phone buzzed with a calendar notification. The Governor's Mansion Landscape Initiative deadline was tomorrow. I'd nearly finished my design, but had hesitated to submit it. What was the point of another rejection? I plucked a spent bloom, rolling the stem between my fingers. 3 years of pushing against resistance had drained me. 3 years of watching my innovations attributed to others during client presentations. 3 years of being too ambitious, too vocal, too everything that threatened the comfortable order. Had this all been inevitable? From my first day, when I suggested replacing the chemical fertilizer display with organic alternatives, and Bryce laughed, calling me our little tree hugger? Or was it when my first drought-resistant installation for the public library received newspaper coverage, and suddenly my design folders began disappearing from the shared drive? The signs were everywhere if I had been willing to read them. The way certain clients were steered away from my consultation table, how Pierce or Truman would insert themselves into meetings with my high-profile clients, the mysterious rescheduling of my workshops to conflict with important garden shows. Merritt? Deb approached cautiously, extending a cup of tea. You okay? Spectacular, I replied, accepting the cup. It's wrong. Everyone knows it. Yet no one says anything. Deb sighed. What can we do? Bryce owns the place. That was the truth that had kept me in check for 3 years. Bryce Pinewood was the third-generation owner of the largest garden center in the county. His word was final. I thought good work would be enough, I said quietly. It should be. We sat in silence until a customer approached, asking about butterfly plants. I stood automatically, professional smile in place, and began explaining the merits of milkweed. This was what I did: educate, innovate, persevere. But for what? After closing, I lingered in the greenhouse, misting the seedlings I'd been nurturing for spring. Native columbines and salvias that most suppliers didn't bother with because they weren't showy enough for conventional gardens. My quiet rebellion. Still here? Pierce's voice startled me. He leaned against the doorframe, key ring twirling around his finger. Just finishing up. You know, I've always admired your passion. The pause suggested otherwise. Must be difficult, caring so much about plants that most people consider weeds. I continued misting. Native plants are the backbone of our ecosystem. Without them, save the lecture. I just wanted to say I hope there are no hard feelings about today. Uncle Bryce makes the decisions, and well, family is family. The spray bottle paused in my hand. Is that why you got the job? Family? His laugh held no humor. I got it because I understand what customers actually want, not what you think they should want. They want pretty gardens that impress neighbors, not science projects. My designs aren't. Look, Merritt, you're talented. Nobody denies that. But you're pushing too hard against tradition. This business ran successfully for 50 years before you arrived with your sustainability crusade, and it will fail in the next 20 if it doesn't adapt. Water restrictions are getting tighter every year. Chemical runoff regulations are coming. The future is sustainable gardening. Pierce sighed dramatically. This is exactly why Uncle Bryce couldn't promote you. You think you know better than everyone else. That kind of attitude disrupts a team. The truth hit like a thunderclap. It wasn't my designs they objected to. It was the threat those designs posed to their business model. Sustainable gardens needed fewer chemicals, less frequent maintenance, reduced water systems. My success threatened their profit streams. I get it now, I whispered. Good. So we can work together without tension. Pierce stepped closer. Actually, I'd appreciate your help with the West Side Municipal Project. Your plant knowledge would be useful, and I could put your name in the secondary credits. Secondary credits. After I'd written the initial proposal that won the bid. I'll think about it, I lied. After he left, I sat among the seedlings and made a decision. Opening my laptop, I pulled up the nearly completed design for the Governor's Mansion initiative. The submission guidelines specified anonymous entries. No names, no company affiliations. Just designs judged on merit alone. For 3 hours, I refined every detail of my vision. Rainwater capture systems feeding native plant communities, pollinator corridors connecting discrete garden rooms, edible landscaping disguised as ornamental borders. Everything I believed in, everything I'd been told was too experimental, too ambitious, too much. If you're listening to this story and know what it's like to have your light dimmed by others, tap that like button. If you've ever had your ideas dismissed only to watch someone else take credit later, subscribe to hear more stories that might just give you the courage to shine anyway. I'd love to read your experiences in the comments. My name is Merritt Bloom, and gardening isn't just my profession, it's my language. Where others see empty spaces, I envision ecosystems. While classmates planned wedding dresses, I sketched native plant combinations that would support local bird populations. My parents hoped I'd grow out of spending every free moment volunteering at community gardens, but instead, I grew into someone who could identify 50 wildflower species before I could legally drive. I arrived at Pinewood Garden Center with a master's degree in sustainable landscape design and naive enthusiasm. Bryce hired me during a market downturn when traditional landscaping contracts had slowed. My pitch was simple. Eco-friendly designs could open new client demographics and prepare the business for increasingly strict water regulations. We'll give your ideas a trial run, he'd said, but our bread and butter is still traditional landscaping. That trial run turned into a waiting list of clients specifically requesting sustainable designs. What began as a curiosity became a significant revenue stream, one that Bryce acknowledged but never fully embraced. The existing design team watched my rise with growing unease. Truman Hansen, senior designer for 20 years, specialized in formal English gardens that required weekly maintenance and regular chemical treatments. Lucinda Wells created elaborate water features that, while beautiful, wasted thousands of gallons annually. Pierce, before his convenient promotion, mainly designed decorative borders featuring non-native annuals requiring replacement each season. My success threatened their expertise. Every water-efficient garden I installed meant fewer maintenance contracts. Every native plant garden reduced chemical sales. My workshops teaching homeowners to maintain their own eco-gardens undercut the center's service department. The resistance began subtly. Plants I'd specified for client installations would mysteriously be out of stock, forcing last-minute substitutions that compromised my designs. My demonstration garden was relocated 3 times, each move placing it further from customer traffic. Workshop materials would disappear hours before classes began. "Must have been a misunderstanding," Bryce would say when I raised concerns. Then came the client interference. Deb overheard Truman telling the Hendersons that my native plant design would attract pests and look weedy by August. When the Riverdale Community Center requested my drought-resistant design, Lucinda warned them it would appear brown and dead during summer months, despite my portfolio showing vibrant summer gardens using appropriate native species. Still, I persisted. I arrived early to propagate hard-to-find native plants myself. I created detailed maintenance guides for clients. I documented the water savings and biodiversity increases in my installed gardens. I built a loyal client base that specifically requested my services. But watching that third promotion go to Pierce, who once planted shade-loving hostas in full southwestern exposure, nearly broke me. 3 years of innovation, growth, and proven success counted less than familiar DNA. That night, after submitting my design to the Governor's Mansion Initiative, I sat on my apartment balcony, surrounded by rare seedlings I'd rescued from development sites. Native plants most people would never notice, yet each vital to some pollinator, bird, or soil microbe. Much like my contributions at work, essential but unrecognized by those in power. My phone pinged with a text from Deb. "Emergency planning meeting tomorrow. New chemical supplier presentation. Mandatory attendance." Another subtle message. The company was doubling down on traditional methods. My innovations would remain contained to my quirky corner. I watered my seedlings and made a decision. Whether or not my Governor's Mansion design won, it was time to plan my exit. 3 years of pushing against resistance had proven that Pinewood wouldn't change from within. Sleep came fitfully that night, my dreams filled with gardens that kept transforming into concrete whenever I turned my back. I woke exhausted but resolute. Today would be different. Today, I would begin looking toward my future, instead of fighting for recognition of my past. The mandatory meeting featured a representative from Chemgrow Industries, showcasing their new and improved line of pesticides and fertilizers. I sat silently while Bryce and the others nodded approvingly at promises of greener lawns with half the effort and complete pest elimination guaranteed. When the representative asked for questions, my hand rose before I could reconsider. "Have you conducted studies on how these chemicals affect pollinator populations?" The question landed like a stone in still water. The representative's smile flickered. "Our products are EPA approved for residential use. That wasn't my question. Do you have data on pollinator impact, soil microbiome effects, groundwater testing results?" Bryce cleared his throat. "Perhaps we can discuss those technical details after the presentation, Merritt." "These aren't technical details. They're fundamental considerations for any garden center claiming to care about environmental stewardship." The silence stretched uncomfortably until the representative launched into rehearsed talking points about balancing effectiveness with responsibility. I didn't push further. My point was made, though likely ignored. After the meeting, Bryce cornered me by the tool shed. "That was inappropriate, Merritt. Asking about environmental impacts of products we sell is inappropriate. The manner in which you challenged our guest was unprofessional. I asked legitimate questions that any responsible garden center should consider." His jaw tightened. "We've tolerated your perspective because it attracts a certain customer demographic, but don't mistake that for company policy. Pinewood has relationships with suppliers that predate your employment and will continue long after." The implied threat hung between us. I nodded once and walked away, his words echoing. After, he was already envisioning Pinewood without me. That afternoon, while helping a customer select plants for a butterfly garden, I noticed Pierce leading my consultation with the Westside Municipal Project team. The project I'd written the proposal for, the project that should have been mine. I watched from behind a display of ornamental grasses, as Pierce gestured with my proposal in his hands, pointing to design elements I'd spent weekends perfecting. The municipal team nodded appreciatively while Pierce explained his vision for transforming the public space into a sustainable showcase. We'll incorporate native plant communities that reduce water usage by 60%, he said, using my exact words from the document. The project director smiled. That's exactly what we're looking for. The water conservation angle will help us secure additional funding. My hands trembled as I gripped a pot of switchgrass. Pierce hadn't just been given my promotion. He was now being handed my work, my ideas, my passion projects. The realization settled like a stone in my chest. This had been happening longer than I knew. That evening, I stayed late, using the office computer to search through old project files. There it was, evidence of my systematic erasure. My detailed plant lists for the library renovation, now under Truman's name. My rainwater capture system for the elementary school, credited to Lucinda. 3 years of innovation, appropriated and reassigned. I downloaded copies to my personal email, hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. Not revenge, I told myself. Documentation. The greenhouse door squeaked open behind me. Working late again? Deb asked, setting down her purse. I forgot my keys. I closed the browser, just checking some plant availability. It is my 40, she hesitated. I heard about the municipal project. Pierce is presenting your proposal. Apparently. It's not right, Merritt. None of this is right, but it's how things work here. I powered down the computer. I'm beginning to understand that. Deb leaned against the counter. What will you do? Deb, the question hung between us. What could I do? Leave and start over somewhere else, where the same dynamics might play out again. Stay and continue watching my work benefit others? I'm considering my options, I said finally. 2 days later, the first anonymous finalist selections for the Governor's Mansion Initiative were announced. 10 designs had been chosen for further consideration, identified only by submission numbers. Design 347, submission, was among them. I kept the news to myself, a private victory in a week of public defeats. The anonymity of the contest meant my work would be judged solely on merit, not on office politics or personal connections. That afternoon, Bryce called an unexpected staff meeting. Everyone gathered in the main showroom, curiosity buzzing. Bryce stood beside a distinguished-looking woman I didn't recognize. This is Imara Reed, Director of the State Environmental Commission, Bryce announced, his voice unusually formal. She's here about an exciting opportunity for Pinewood. Imara stepped forward. Thank you for your time. As you may know, the Governor's Mansion is undergoing a complete landscape renovation, focusing on sustainability and native ecology. The initiative committee has selected 10 finalist designs, and we're visiting potential contractor firms to discuss implementation capabilities. My pulse quickened. They were considering Pinewood to implement one of the finalist designs, possibly mine. This is a prestigious project that would put the selected firm at the forefront of sustainable landscaping in our state, Imara continued. The governor is personally committed to making the mansion grounds a showcase for water conservation and habitat restoration. Bryce beamed. Pinewood Garden Center has been a leader in landscape design for over 50 years. We'd be honored to be considered. Excellent. Imara smiled. Now, I'd like to meet your sustainable landscape specialists. Who heads your eco-friendly design department? The room fell silent. Bryce's smile faltered as he glanced around, eventually looking at me. Merritt handles most of our sustainability initiatives, he said reluctantly. Perfect. I'd love to see your demonstration gardens and discuss your approach to native plant communities. I felt every eye in the room on me as I stepped forward. I'd be happy to show you our sustainable design area. As we walked toward my demonstration garden, Bryce and Pierce hurried to join us. Imara spoke directly to me. The committee was particularly impressed with finalist design 347, she said. The integration of rainwater management with pollinator corridors showed exceptional understanding of ecological principles. My heart pounded. She was describing my design. That sounds innovative, I replied carefully. It is, in fact, it's precisely the approach the governor hopes to implement. Does your team use similar techniques in your commercial designs? Before I could answer, Pierce stepped in. Absolutely. Our designs frequently incorporate those principles. I recently completed a municipal project using that exact approach. I bit my tongue as Pierce described his water conservation techniques, all taken directly from my proposal. Bryce nodded along. adding comments about Pinewood's commitment to sustainability. Imara listened politely, then turned back to me. And what's your perspective, Merritt? As the sustainability specialist, do you find your innovative approaches are well supported here? The question hung in the air like summer humidity before a storm. Bryce and Pierce watched me, tension visible in their postures. 3 years of diminishment, credit stealing, and rejection flashed through my mind. I believe in Pinewood's potential to lead in sustainable landscaping, I said carefully. My demonstration garden showcases what's possible when we prioritize ecological principles. We reached the native plant section, my section, tucked in the furthest corner of the nursery. Despite its location, the garden hummed with life. Bumblebees bounced between coneflowers, goldfinches plucked seeds from native grasses, and a monarch butterfly drifted lazily over the milkweed. You created this? Imara asked, watching a hummingbird dart between cardinal flowers. Yes, it demonstrates how native plants can create functioning ecosystems even in small spaces. She nodded appreciatively. It's remarkable how much biodiversity you've attracted. Exactly the approach the governor envisions. Pierce stepped forward. Merritt has been a valuable team member, but our comprehensive approach includes both traditional and sustainable methods. I'd be happy to show you some of my recent designs that blend both approaches. Imara held up her hand. Actually, I'd like to continue speaking with Merritt. Perhaps we could discuss her design philosophy privately? The look on Pierce's face was worth 3 years of frustration. Bryce forced a smile. Of course, we'll be in the main office when you're finished. Once they left, Imara's professional demeanor softened. Now, we can speak frankly. The committee was deeply impressed with Design 347. The anonymous submission process was specifically implemented to identify innovation regardless of firm size or designer reputation. My mouth went dry. That's an excellent approach. That's an excellent approach. It is, and it's yielded some surprising results. She studied me intently. The design shows remarkable attention to detail. The creator clearly understands both the science of ecosystems and the aesthetics needed for a high-profile installation. I nodded, uncertain how to respond without revealing myself. Tell me, Merritt, are your talents truly appreciated here at Pinewood? The directness of her question caught me off guard. Before I could formulate a diplomatic answer, Deb approached with a customer inquiry. I excused myself to answer a quick question about pollinator plants. When I returned, Imara was examining my hand-drawn plant community diagrams posted near the butterfly section. These are impressive, she said. The line quality and attention to plant interactions reminds me of, she paused, studying me, reminds me of the finalist design I mentioned. My chest tightened. She suspected or knew I was the designer. The governor isn't just looking for a design, Imara continued. He's looking for the right designer, someone who can articulate the vision, supervise the implementation, and educate the public about sustainable landscaping principles. That sounds like an incredible opportunity. It would be, particularly for someone whose talents might be underutilized in their current position. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Bryce. What's taking so long? Bring her to the office now. I pocketed my phone. It seems my boss is getting impatient. I imagine he is. Imara smiled knowingly. Before we join them, I should mention that the selection committee will announce the final design choice next week. The selected designer will be offered a state contract that includes both the mansion project and a role developing sustainability guidelines for all state properties. My heart raced at the possibility, a chance to implement my vision on a statewide scale, free from Pinewood's limitations. That would be a career-defining opportunity for any landscape designer, I said. Yes, particularly one whose innovations haven't been fully recognized. Imara handed me her business card. My direct number is on the back. I'd welcome a conversation about your career aspirations, regardless of the committee's final decision. As we walked toward the main office, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time, someone with actual influence recognized my work, even suspected it was mine despite the anonymous submission. Bryce's office buzzed with nervous energy as we entered. He'd assembled the entire design team, portfolios open to their most impressive projects. Pierce stood front and center, ready to take command of the conversation. Mrs. Reed, we've prepared a presentation of our most innovative sustainable projects, Bryce began. That won't be necessary today, Imara replied smoothly. I've seen what I needed to see. The committee will make its final decision next week. But we haven't shown you our commercial portfolio, Pierce protested. My recent municipal project. I'm particularly interested in native plant integration and water conservation techniques, Imara interrupted. Based on what I've observed, I have a clear understanding of Pinewood's capabilities in those areas. Her eyes briefly met mine, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. Then she thanked Bryce for his time and departed, leaving a wake of confusion behind her. What exactly did you tell her? Bryce demanded once she was gone. I showed her my demonstration garden and answered her questions about native plants. I replied calmly, "That's it? She spent 30 minutes with you to look at some weedy flowers?" The dismissive comment stung, but I maintained my composure. She seemed particularly interested in ecological approaches to landscape design, which is exactly what my municipal project showcases, Pierce interjected. You should have brought her to see my portfolio. I met his gaze steadily. She specifically asked to see the native plant demonstration area. Bryce ran a hand through his hair. This is a major opportunity for Pinewood. If they select one of those finalist designs, we could be the firm implementing a high-profile state project. Imagine the publicity, Lucinda added. It would establish us as leaders in sustainable landscaping. The irony wasn't lost on me. For 3 years, they'd marginalized my sustainable approaches. Now they wanted to claim expertise in the very methods they'd dismissed. We need to present a united front next week, Bryce continued. Pierce will lead our presentation to the selection committee. Actually, I said quietly, I won't be available next Wednesday. I've scheduled a personal day. Bryce stared at me. Reschedule it. This is priority. I'm afraid I can't. It's a medical appointment I've waited 3 months to secure. The lie came easily, surprising me. I had no appointment, but I had no intention of watching Pierce present himself as Pinewood's sustainability expert to the committee that was considering my design. This is exactly the problem, Pierce muttered. No team perspective. I gathered my things without responding. As I headed toward the door, Bryce called after me. Merritt, we need to discuss your attitude. First thing tomorrow. I turned back. I look forward to it. That night, I sat on my balcony, reviewing the job descriptions I'd found online. 3 landscape firms in neighboring counties were seeking designers with sustainable expertise. 2 parks departments had posted environmental educator positions. The options weren't limitless, but they existed. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Design 347 has advanced to the final 3. Committee meeting Wednesday to make selection. Thought you might want to know. IR? I stared at the message from Imara Reed, my hands trembling with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. My design was in the final 3. By Wednesday, I would know if my vision for the governor's mansion had won, anonymously, on merit alone. The realization settled over me like the first warm day of spring. Regardless of the outcome, everything was about to change. Tuesday morning arrived with a message from Bryce. Meeting postponed. Working from home today. See you tomorrow. A convenient absence. I spent the day tending to customer needs and finalizing plant orders while dodging Pierce's repeated questions about my conversation with Imara. Each time he approached, I found a new customer requiring assistance or plants needing urgent attention. By closing time, an unfamiliar calm had settled over me. Tomorrow would bring the committee's decision, and regardless of the outcome, I had options. For the first time in 3 years, I felt the weight of Pinewood's limitations lifting from my shoulders. That evening, I spread my seed catalogs across my kitchen table and began drafting a business plan. If I was going to leave Pinewood, I needed clarity about my next steps. Native plant nursery, design consultancy, educational workshops. The possibilities energized me more than I'd felt in months. My phone rang shortly after 9. Deb's name flashed on the screen. You need to come in early tomorrow, she said without preamble. Something's happening. What do you mean? Bryce called an emergency staff meeting for 7:30. Pierce has been making photocopies of your client notes and design sketches all afternoon. My stomach tightened. Why? I don't know exactly, but I overheard him telling Truman they needed to prepare for all contingencies regarding the governor's project. Merritt, I think they're planning something. Sleep eluded me that night. I arrived at Pinewood at 7:15 the next morning to find the parking lot already full. Through the conference room windows, I could see the entire design team gathered around the table, heads bent over documents. When I entered, conversation stopped abruptly. Spread across the table were copies of my design sketches, client notes, and plant lists, all taken from my files without permission. "Good morning," I said, surveying the scene. "Interesting reading material." Bryce cleared his throat. "We're preparing for the committee presentation. If Pinewood is selected to implement one of the finalist designs, we need to demonstrate our expertise in sustainable landscaping. Using my work. Using company resources," Pierce corrected. "Everything you've created here belongs to Pinewood. Using company resources." Technically true, but the implications were clear. They planned to present my innovations, my techniques, and my expertise as collective company knowledge, with Pierce positioned as the sustainability expert. "I see," I said simply, taking a seat. Bryce outlined their strategy. Pierce would lead the presentation, showcasing Pinewood's approach to sustainable design. Truman and Lucinda would provide supporting examples of similar projects, my projects, rebranded under their names. I would attend but remain in a supporting role. "Questions?" Bryce asked when he finished. "Just one," I replied. "What time is the committee meeting?" 2:00. "We should arrive by 1:30 to set up." I nodded, making a mental note. The timing worked perfectly. "Now," Bryce continued, "we need to prepare responses to potential technical questions. Merritt, the committee will likely ask about native plant selections and water conservation. We'll need you to brief Pierce on appropriate answers." For the next 2 hours, I answered their questions about ecological principles, soil biology, and water management systems. I explained the science behind my designs, watching as Pierce frantically took notes on concepts he'd previously dismissed as unnecessary complications. At 10:00, my phone buzzed with a calendar alert I'd set months ago. Native Plant Society grant application deadline. "I need to step out," I announced, standing. "I promised Mrs. Hawthorne I'd help her select plants for her butterfly garden this morning." "This meeting takes priority," Bryce insisted. "Mrs. Hawthorne is your biggest client," I reminded him. "Her gardening group brings in thousands in annual revenue. I'll be back in an hour." Before he could protest further, I walked out, leaving them surrounded by my copied designs. Instead of helping Mrs. Hawthorne, who had no appointment, I drove to the coffee shop 3 blocks away and opened my laptop. The grant application had been on my radar for months, funding for an independent project promoting native plant education. I'd started the application but abandoned it, believing my future remained at Pinewood. Now, I completed it with renewed purpose, outlining my vision for community workshops and demonstration gardens independent of corporate interests. After submitting the application, I composed a brief professional email to Imara Reed. "Thank you for your interest in sustainable landscape design. I'm writing to express my interest in discussing potential opportunities with the State Environmental Commission, regardless of the Governor's Mansion Initiative outcome. My commitment to ecological landscaping extends beyond my current position, and I would welcome a conversation about how my expertise might serve broader community needs." I pressed send, then ordered another coffee, watching the clock. At 11:30, I returned to Pinewood, where the strategy meeting continued without interruption. Pierce had moved from taking notes to practicing his presentation, reading directly from my design philosophy statement while Bryce nodded approvingly. "Welcome back," Lucinda said with forced brightness. Pierce was just practicing his explanation of rainwater management systems. "So I hear," I replied, resuming my seat. "That particular explanation comes from my presentation at last year's Water Conservation Symposium." Pierce faltered, then continued reading my words as if they were his own. I said nothing further, letting the discomfort build in the room. At noon, Bryce called a lunch break. "Be back by 12:45. We'll leave for the committee meeting at 1 sharp." As everyone filed out, Deb caught my eye and tilted her head toward the greenhouse. I followed her there, away from curious ears. "They're stealing everything you've built," she whispered. 3 years of your work, and they're packaging it as a team effort with Pierce as the face. "I'm aware. What are you going to do?" I smiled, the calm in my chest surprising even me. "I'm going to let them." "What? After everything they've done?" Sometimes the best response isn't confrontation, but allowing people to reveal themselves fully. Deb studied my face. "You're planning something." "I'm merely allowing events to unfold naturally." At 12:55, I returned to the conference room where the team was gathering their materials. Bryce looked up with visible relief. "There you are. We were concerned you might be late." "I wouldn't miss this opportunity," I assured him. As they packed up presentation boards and plant samples, my phone buzzed with a text from Imara. Committee convening early. Can you come now? I looked up at the busy team. I just remembered I left some important client files in my car. I'll meet you there. Before anyone could question me, I walked quickly to the parking lot, got in my car, and drove directly to the state capitol building. The security guard checked my ID and directed me to the Environmental Commission offices on the third floor. Imara met me in the reception area, professional but with a warmth in her eyes. Thank you for coming early. The committee has some specific questions before making their final decision. She led me to a conference room where 7 people sat around a polished table. In the center lay 3 landscape designs, including mine. Committee members, this is Merritt Bloom, currently with Pinewood Garden Center. I shook hands with each person as Imara introduced them. The governor's chief of staff, the state botanist, 2 landscape architecture professors, the Capitol grounds supervisor, and a prominent environmental advocate. The chief of staff spoke first. Miss Bloom, we're impressed with Design 347. The integration of ecological principles with aesthetic considerations shows remarkable sophistication. Thank you, I said simply. A moment of silence followed before the state botanist leaned forward. Are you acknowledging this is your design? The directness of the question caught me off guard. I glanced at Imara, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, I confirmed. I created Design 347. Interesting, the chief of staff said. Because we received a call this morning from Bryce Pinewood claiming that his design team, led by Pierce Pinewood, created this submission. He specifically mentioned it was a collaborative effort with Pierce as the primary designer. My breath caught. They had gone further than I anticipated, not just stealing my ideas, but actively claiming credit for my anonymous submission. That is categorically false, I stated. I created this design independently, outside of work hours, using my personal resources. No one at Pinewood has seen this design. Can you prove that? One of the professors asked. I opened my laptop and pulled up my personal cloud drive. These are my original sketches, dated 3 weeks before the submission deadline. You'll notice they include personal notes about plant selections based on visits to local natural areas. I can also show you the evolution of the design through multiple iterations. For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through my design process, explaining ecological considerations and answering technical questions. The more I spoke, the more animated the committee members became, asking deeper questions about soil biology, water management, and native plant communities. One last question, the environmental advocate said. Why did you submit anonymously rather than through Pinewood? I took a deep breath, because I knew my design wouldn't be supported by my employer. Pinewood Garden Center presents itself as forward-thinking, but in practice, it resists truly sustainable approaches that might reduce chemical sales or maintenance contracts. That's a serious allegation, the chief of staff noted. It's my lived experience over 3 years, I replied. I've been denied promotion 3 times despite bringing in significant new business. My demonstration gardens are relegated to low visibility areas. My workshop materials regularly disappear before classes. When I succeed despite these obstacles, others are given credit for my work. As I finished speaking, the door opened. Bryce, Pierce, and the rest of the Pinewood team filed in, surprise registering on their faces when they saw me already seated with the committee. Mr. Pinewood, Imara said coolly, thank you for joining us. We were just discussing Design 347 with its creator. Bryce paled visibly. Pierce stepped forward, portfolio in hand. There seems to be some confusion. As I was about to present, our team at Pinewood developed that design collaboratively. With my direction, the state botanist raised an eyebrow. That's interesting, because Miss Bloom has just shown us her original sketches and development process. Perhaps you could show us yours? Pierce opened his portfolio, revealing the photocopied pages of my client notes and design sketches, none related to the governor's mansion design. These are supporting materials, he stammered. The actual design submission was a team effort. Mr. Pinewood, Imara said firmly, this committee selected finalists through an anonymous process specifically to judge designs on merit alone. We've verified Miss Bloom as the creator of Design 347, which has been selected as our winner. The committee has also voted unanimously to offer her the implementation contract and the position of State Sustainability Director. The room fell silent. Bryce's face flushed deep red while Pierce stared at me with undisguised hatred. Furthermore, Imara continued, Given the apparent attempt to misrepresent authorship of this submission, the committee has decided that Pinewood Garden Center will not be considered as the implementation contractor. Ms. Bloom will have full authority to select her own implementation team. This is outrageous, Bryce sputtered. Merritt is our employee. Her work belongs to Pinewood. Actually, I interjected calmly, the contest rules specifically stated that submissions must be original work, not created as work for hire. I designed this on my own time, using my own resources. Nothing in my employment contract prevents me from pursuing independent projects outside of work hours. The chief of staff stood. Congratulations, Miss Bloom. The governor looks forward to working with you on transforming the mansion grounds, and eventually, all state properties, into showcases of sustainable landscaping. 2 weeks later, I stood on the mansion lawn, supervising the first native plant installations. My team, including Deb, who had eagerly accepted my job offer, worked efficiently around me. In the distance, a news crew interviewed the governor about the innovative ecological approach to the mansion renovation. My phone buzzed with a text from Imara, local news reporting Pinewood Garden Center filing for restructuring. Apparently, their 3 largest commercial clients have terminated contracts. Something about seeking more forward-thinking landscape services. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and knelt to check the soil moisture around a newly planted serviceberry. The garden was coming to life exactly as I had envisioned it, a living ecosystem that would inspire change throughout the state. As visitors gathered for the first public tour of the renovation, I stood to address them, catching sight of Pierce watching from the sidelines, jobless and fuming. Welcome to the governor's Sustainable Landscape Initiative, I began. Today marks the beginning of a new approach to public spaces, one that works with nature rather than against it. Just like these native plants, good ideas need the right environment to flourish. Sometimes that means finding a new place to put down roots. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Have you ever had to leave a situation to find the recognition you deserved? Share your experiences in the comments. I'd love to hear how you found your own path to success despite the obstacles.